My entire family blames me for the train wreck that was my sister's wedding. The irony is, I was 1,000 miles away on a beach in Key West, a half-melted mojito in my hand, when the groom decided to make a run for it. They are convinced that if I had just been there, I could have swooped in like some kind of emotional superhero and saved the day. What they fail to grasp is that my absence wasn't the problem. To them, my presence always was. To really get the picture, you have to understand the basic physics of my family. My older sister Victoria wasn't just the sun, she was the entire solar system. She blazed, she burned, and she had an unspoken rule that everything and everyone must orbit her. My parents were her devoted astronomers, their lives spent charting her glorious path and celebrating every sparkle. And me? I was a forgotten moon, a piece of cosmic debris they'd mistaken for a star a long time ago, still caught in the inescapable gravitational pull of her endless drama. Calling Victoria the golden child is like calling the Pacific Ocean a little damp. She was the star of every show, the lead in every play, the valedictorian. She didn't just have good grades, she had a perfect academic record. She didn't just join clubs, she was the student body president. Our house wasn't a home so much as it was the Victoria Museum. The mantelpiece over our living room fireplace sagged under the weight of her debate team trophies and volleyball medals. The walls were a gallery of her achievements, framed newspaper clippings celebrating everything from a local spelling bee win to her acceptance into a top-tier university. My mother could seamlessly weave Victoria's latest triumph into any conversation. She could be discussing interest rates at the bank and somehow conclude with, "And speaking of high returns, my Victoria just landed a prestigious internship on Wall Street." I was her negative image, the shadow that proved the sun was shining. I was the quiet one, the kid who found more comfort in the dusty silence of the public library than in the chaotic roar of a football game. I was an artist, happiest when I was alone in my room with a set of charcoal pencils, conjuring entire worlds onto a blank sheet of paper. My victories were quiet and personal, which, in the currency of our family, made them worthless. When Victoria was named prom queen, my parents threw a lavish party with caterers and a string quartet. When I won a statewide art competition that came with a scholarship to a summer program in New York City, my father gave me a brief, distracted pat on the shoulder and said, "That's nice, sweetie. Now can you give your mother a hand with the canapes? We're celebrating Victoria being elected president of her sorority." I learned very early on that seeking their approval was a fool's errand. My self-worth had to be self-generated because it wasn't coming from anywhere else. Despite all this, I was her person. I was her emotional first responder, her 24/7 crisis hotline. When a friend betrayed her or a boyfriend was a jerk, it was my phone that would ring at 2 in the morning, her ragged sobs on the other end. I was the one who spent hours editing her term papers until they were flawless. I was the dependable, unseen stagehand who made sure the star of the show never missed her mark. So when she announced her engagement to David, a man I thought was genuinely decent, I was happy for her. David was kind and level-headed, and he seemed to have a grounding effect on Victoria's more dramatic impulses. I accepted the role of maid of honor, ready to be the supportive sister I had always been. I imagined us having fun at cake tastings, me offering gentle advice on floral arrangements, and planning a bachelorette party that was more about genuine friendship than a staged weekend of excess. That, however, was a fantasy. The invitation to actually participate in her life never arrived. The weeks following the engagement stretched into months, and a strange, cold silence grew between us. Then the social media updates began. A carousel of professionally shot photos from an exclusive bridal boutique in New York City showed Victoria and my mother sipping champagne, surrounded by a sea of white tulle. The caption read, "Found the dress of my dreams with my number one girl, my mom. A day of pure magic." I wasn't invited. A few weeks later, another post. This time, a video montage from a wild weekend in Las Vegas. A dozen women in matching hot pink Victoria's Bride Tribe shirts were doing shots and dancing on a club banquet. I learned about it the same way her 2,000 followers did, by scrolling through my feed. Whenever I tried to gently ask her what was going on, she became a master of deflection. Oh, the dress shopping? It was totally spontaneous. Mom and I were just walking past the store and decided to pop in. She would lie, as if those high-end salons didn't have a 6-month waiting list for an appointment. Or, the Vegas trip was just a thing with my college friends. You've always hated that loud party scene. I was just sparing you the agony. Each excuse was a flimsy, transparent veil over the truth. I was being methodically and deliberately pushed out. My parents were, of course, no help at all. When I finally broke down and told my mother how hurt I was, she let out the long, weary sigh of a long-suffering saint. Olivia, please, let's not make this about you. This is Victoria's special time. You know how easily she gets stressed. The best thing you can do right now is just keep the peace. In my family's dictionary, keeping the peace was defined as, I will now swallow her feelings so that Victoria doesn't have to deal with them. The final brutal confirmation of my exile came in the mail, or rather, it came to everyone but me. My cousin texted me a picture of the wedding invitation. It was stunning, printed on thick, cream-colored cardstock with elegant gold foil lettering. It formally requested the pleasure of the recipient's company at the wedding of Victoria and David. From the family gossip mill, I quickly learned that the guest list was enormous. It included my father's golf buddies, my mother's garden club, and a handful of David's third cousins whom he had met only once, but it did not include me, her only sister. That was the moment the dam finally broke. All the polite fictions and passive-aggressive posts washed away, leaving behind one cold, hard truth. I was not wanted. A few days later, I cornered Victoria when she stopped by our parents' house. I fought to keep my voice steady, but the hurt was a physical lump in my throat. Just tell me why, Victoria, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Why am I not invited to your wedding? She wouldn't even look at me. She busied herself with straightening a framed photo on the mantel. A photo of herself, of course. Look, Olivia, it's not personal, she said, her voice flat and rehearsed. We just decided to keep the guest list very curated. We only wanted people there who have been truly essential to our journey as a couple. A dry, bitter laugh escaped me before I could choke it back. Essential to your journey, you invited Dad's entire Sunday golf group. You invited Mom's friends from her book club. I am your sister. We shared a bedroom for 16 years. How am I not part of your story? She finally turned to face me, her expression a mask of cold irritation. You want the truth? Your whole vibe is a downer. You never enjoy big parties. You just find a corner and stand there with that look on your face like you're judging everyone. I don't want that kind of heavy, critical energy at my wedding. I want my pictures to be filled with happy, smiling people. So, it was personal. It was the most explicit confirmation of a fear I'd carried my whole life. In the perfectly curated museum of her life, I was a flawed exhibit, a smudge on the pristine wall that needed to be removed. My parents, predictably, rushed to her side. It's her special day, Olivia, my father said, refusing to meet my gaze. She gets to decide who she shares it with. Her happiness is what matters most right now. No one ever asked what mattered to me. No one seemed to notice or care that my own family was treating me like a stranger. And in that moment, something inside me didn't just crack, it shattered. The deep ocean of hurt froze over, turning into a sheet of cold, hard ice. They had made their position perfectly clear. It was time for me to make mine. If I wasn't good enough to be at the party, then I certainly wasn't going to be on call for the inevitable cleanup crew. I knew my family, I knew Victoria. If a single flower was out of place, if the cake was a minute late, they would need a scapegoat. And my lifelong role in this family was to absorb blame and manage crises. Not this time. That night I went home, opened my laptop, and with a feeling of pure, defiant freedom, I booked a 7-day, all-inclusive, non-refundable vacation to a quiet resort in Key West. My flight left 2 days before the wedding and returned 4 days after. As I typed in my credit card details, a wave of exhilarating relief washed over me. I packed my bathing suits and sundresses, set an out-of-office reply for my work email, and on the morning of my flight, I powered my cell phone off completely. I was severing the digital leash that had bound me to their world. I was going dark. The day of Victoria's wedding was, for me, paradise. I woke up not to a frantic call about a misplaced corsage, but to the gentle lapping of waves and the scent of salt in the air. I spent the morning reading a novel by the pool. That afternoon, at the exact moment Victoria was supposed to be walking down the aisle, I was taking a slow walk along a wooden pier, watching pelicans dive for fish in the turquoise water. I found a small tiki bar at the end of the pier, ordered a mojito, and watched the sun paint the sky in shades of pink and orange. I had prepared myself for some kind of emotional ambush, a sudden pang of regret, or a flicker of sadness for the milestone I was missing. But it never came. Instead, what I felt was a profound, almost stunning sense of peace. It was the peace that comes from being completely free, from not having to perform a role I never wanted. There were no fake smiles to wear, no awkward conversations with distant relatives asking about my career, no need to bite my tongue while my mother gave an epic toast about her perfect daughter. For the first time in my 30 years, I was unapologetically choosing myself, and it felt incredible. I kept my phone off for another full day, luxuriating in the silence. But on the third day of my trip, curiosity finally won. I figured I would turn it on, scroll through a few hundred wedding photos, feel a quick sting of something, and then get back to my book. I plugged the phone in, and when it finally came to life, it was like a digital bomb had gone off. The screen flared with a chaotic, desperate flood of notifications, 32 missed calls, 61 text messages, 11 voicemails. They were from my mother, my father, my aunts, my cousins. The sheer volume was staggering, and a tight knot of dread began to form in my stomach. I scanned the text previews. From Mom, Olivia, you need to call me this instant. It's an emergency. From Dad, where are you? This is a complete disaster. Victoria needs you. Your behavior is inexcusable. From my Aunt Susan, I am just so disappointed in you, Olivia. To abandon your family like this, your sister is heartbroken. Abandon them? They had disowned me. The hypocrisy was so thick I could barely breathe. I skipped the text and went straight to the most recent voicemail. It was my mother, her voice a ragged, hysterical mess. How could you do this? How could you just vanish? If you had only been here, this never would have happened. She needed you. You have to get on a plane and come home right now. What never would have happened? Confused and now truly worried, I called my dad, hoping he would be more coherent. He answered on the first ring, his voice thick with a mixture of anger and exhaustion. Olivia, thank God, where in the world have you been? I'm on vacation, Dad. The vacation I booked after I was explicitly told I wasn't welcome at the wedding. What is going on? He let out a long, heavy sigh, and the whole story came tumbling out. The wedding had been a complete catastrophe. Everything had been set. The 200 guests were seated, the quartet was playing, and Victoria was in the bridal suite, looking like a princess. But David, the groom, never made it to the altar. Moments before he was supposed to walk out, he had a complete breakdown. He told his best man he just couldn't do it. He slipped out a side door of the lavish hotel, got in his car, and drove off. The only explanation he gave was a single devastating text message he sent to Victoria. I am so sorry. I can't do this. Victoria had completely fallen apart. My mother was beside herself. The guests sat in stunned, awkward silence for nearly an hour before my father had to take the microphone and make the most humiliating announcement of his life. The perfect wedding, planned with the precision of a military operation, had imploded. And then came the part that made my blood run cold. Your mother thinks, and frankly, I'm starting to agree with her, my dad said, his voice laced with accusation, that if you had been there, this all could have been avoided. You always knew how to calm people down. You could have talked to David, settled his nerves. At the very least, you should have been here to support your sister. She's your family. I was stunned into a moment of pure disbelieving silence. A dry, humorless laugh crawled up my throat. Are you actually listening to yourself right now? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Are you seriously trying to pin this on me? The two of you and Victoria spent the last 6 months making it painfully clear that my presence was not only not required, it was actively unwanted. I was heavy energy. But the second the groom makes a break for it, I'm suddenly the one person who could have prevented it. That is a level of delusion that is honestly breathtaking. Olivia, this is not the time for finger pointing. No, this is exactly the time, I cut him off, my voice now sharp and clear. Victoria didn't want me there. She made her choice. She and David are adults, and they are now dealing with the consequences of their own relationship. I am on a vacation that I paid for, and I am not cutting it short. I will be home when my flight lands. Goodbye, Dad. I hung up before he could reply. The beautiful peace I had built around myself was shattered, replaced by a slow-burning rage. For the rest of my trip, my phone continued to be a pipeline for their blame. My mother sent long, rambling texts calling me selfish and heartless. My extended family joined in, painting me as the cruel villain who was sunbathing while her sister's world fell apart. Victoria herself eventually sent a tear-stained, typo-filled message accusing me of secretly celebrating her pain. I didn't reply to any of them. I was done. They had used me as their emotional punching bag for the last time. When I finally flew home, I was bracing for a confrontation, but the day after I returned, something unexpected happened. I received a message, but it wasn't from my family. It was from David. It was a long, heartfelt email. He started by apologizing profusely for the chaos and humiliation he had caused. And then he apologized to me. I was confused. Why was he apologizing to me? Then I kept reading, and the entire disaster was suddenly cast in a shocking, brilliant new light. He explained that his cold feet weren't a last-minute panic. It was a slow-dawning horror that had been building for months. He described the immense pressure from Victoria and my parents to be the perfect husband for the perfect daughter, a role he felt increasingly trapped in. He said he felt like his own opinions, his own desires, were being systematically erased in service of creating a flawless public image. He was, in his own words, a well-dressed accessory in the Victoria show. And then came the part that literally made me stop breathing. "Olivia," he wrote, "I know this is going to sound strange, but a huge part of why I couldn't go through with it was you. Or rather, it was watching how Victoria treated you. I saw her methodically and coldly cut you out of every single part of this wedding. I heard how she talked about you when you weren't there, how she dismissed you like you were an old piece of furniture that didn't match the new decor. I actually asked her about it once. I asked why her own sister wasn't a bridesmaid, why you weren't even at the shower. She just shrugged and said that you two were fundamentally different people and that you wouldn't add anything to the vibe." It was so callous, and it was a huge wake-up call for me. I started looking at our own relationship through that same lens, and I saw the pattern everywhere. She did it to me too, just in smaller ways. She dismissed my concerns about our insane budget. She openly made fun of my taste in music. She cared infinitely more about how our life looked on Instagram than how it actually felt when it was just the two of us. Watching her treat you, her own flesh and blood, with such transactional cruelty made me realize something terrifying. That is simply who she is. She will always prioritize the perfect picture over the actual people in it. I realized I wasn't just marrying Victoria. I was marrying into a family system where only one person's feelings ever mattered. I couldn't sign up for a lifetime of being erased. I saw my own future in the way she looked right through you, Olivia, and I had to get out. I just sat there staring at my screen, completely speechless. For my entire life, I had thought her casual cruelty was a special poison reserved just for me. But it wasn't. It was a core feature of her personality. She had built her dream wedding on a foundation of image and control, and that foundation was so brittle that one person finally seeing the truth was enough to bring the whole thing crashing down. A strange mixture of vindication and profound sadness washed over me. I felt a brief pang of pity for a sister so lost in her own fantasy that she drove away the very people who might have actually loved her. But the feeling that dominated everything else was one of absolute, unshakable clarity. Armed with this truth, I finally went to my parents' house. I let them have their say. I sat in silence and let them unload all their anger, disappointment, and blame. And when they were finally done, I calmly told them what David had written in his email. I explained that their perfect daughter's perfect wedding didn't fall apart because I was in Florida. It fell apart because it was a sham, orchestrated by a person who valued the appearance of love more than love itself. They refused to believe it. "He's a coward, making up excuses," my mother insisted. "He's just trying to shift the blame." But for the first time in my life, I saw a flicker of doubt in my father's eyes. He knew, on some level, I was telling the truth. Victoria hasn't spoken a single word to me since that day. In the version of the story she tells, I'm the evil sister who poisoned her fiancé's mind. My parents still treat me with a frosty, polite distance, trapped between their lifelong worship of Victoria and the inconvenient truth of what happened. But their opinions no longer hold any power over me. I have no idea if my family will ever heal. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But I no longer lie awake at night worrying about it. That trip to Key West did more than give me a tan. It taught me that choosing yourself is not selfish, it is an act of survival. I spent my life shivering in the long cold shadow of my sister's artificial sun. But now, for the first time, I am learning to build my own fire, to create my own warmth, and I am never going back into the cold again.